In May 1798, a huge French invasion force set sail across the Mediterranean Sea. It was a massive fleet, 55,000 men on over 300 ships, protected by 13 powerful warships. On the strongest ship, the L'Orient, was General Napoleon Bonaparte. He was a famous hero from the war in Italy, and he had new orders from his government. He was told to lead an army to Egypt, the richest part of the Ottoman Empire. To Europeans, Egypt was a mysterious and wonderful ancient land. After 6 years of war, France had only one enemy left: Great Britain. Taking over Egypt would be a big hit to the British. It would mess up their trade in the eastern Mediterranean and threaten their links to India and the East. This trade made Britain a lot of money, which helped them pay for the war. What's more, it was a chance for France to bring its new ideas to the people of Egypt and free them from old beliefs and unfair rulers. The French government, which was corrupt and greedy, saw two more good things about this plan. First, they could get a lot of money from Egypt. Second, they could send the very popular and ambitious General Bonaparte far away from Paris, where they worried he might try to take power. Napoleon himself was thrilled about the mission, and he had helped plan it. It was a chance for him to become even more famous, just like his heroes, Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. Like Alexander, Napoleon even had wild dreams of marching to India to attack the British there. He told his secretary, "Europe is a molehill. We must go to the east. That is where all the greatest glory has been achieved." But the Mediterranean Sea was a dangerous place for the French. While France's armies were great on land, Britain had proven it was the strongest naval power. It had won big sea battles against France's allies, Spain and the Netherlands. Now a British admiral, Sir Horatio Nelson, was in the Mediterranean with his 14 warships, hunting for the French. Nelson knew a large French fleet had left port, but he didn't know where it was going. It was a top secret. The French ships sailed south along the coast of Italy without being seen. On June 9th, they reached the island of Malta. The island was ruled by the Knights of St. John, an old religious order from the time of the Crusades. But the French wanted the island for a naval base to cause problems for the British. Back in 1565, the Knights had bravely fought off a huge Ottoman army for 3 months. Now the local people didn't like them, and the Knights were fighting among themselves. They gave up to Napoleon in just 2 days. Napoleon stayed in Malta for 6 days. He changed its old government, opened schools, ended slavery, and took money and supplies. Then he sailed for Egypt, leaving a general and 5,000 soldiers to hold the island. But where was the British Navy? Back in May, strong winds had scattered Nelson's ships. He had now gotten his fleet back together, correctly guessed Napoleon was going to Egypt, and was racing to stop him. If he could find the French fleet, the skilled British sailors would almost certainly destroy it. Then, the French got lucky. On the night of the 22nd, Nelson's ships passed just a few miles from the French fleet. But because it was dark and foggy, neither side saw the other. The British ships sailed on to Alexandria but found no sign of the French. A frustrated Nelson waited for a day before heading north to keep searching. Just a few hours later, Napoleon's first ships arrived at Alexandria. Napoleon knew British warships were nearby, so he wanted his men to get off the ships as fast as possible. 5,000 French soldiers landed at night. The next morning they attacked Alexandria and quickly beat its small group of defenders. The rest of the French army then landed safely. Napoleon had brought 38,000 soldiers to Egypt, most of whom were experienced soldiers from the war in Italy. The army was led by famous generals like Bon, Desaix, Kleber, Menou, and Renier. The cavalry was led by the tall and strong Thomas Alexandre Dumas. He was France's first black general, born in Haiti to a French nobleman and an enslaved African woman. He was already famous and nicknamed the Black Devil by his enemies. There were other familiar faces too, like Napoleon's right-hand man General Berthier, and commanders like Murat, Lannes, and Marmont. The army also brought 167 scientists, artists, and experts to study Egypt's history and nature. But when they got there, Napoleon and his men were very disappointed with Alexandria. The great city from ancient times, built by Alexander the Great himself, was now just a small run-down town with only 6,000 people. Earthquakes and years of neglect had ruined it. On paper, the Ottoman Empire ruled Egypt. But, in reality, local warlords called Mamluks held the power. 2 of them, Murad Bey and Ibrahim Bey were in charge. The Mamluks were once slave soldiers, who became amazing horsemen and brave fighters. Now they ruled Egypt harshly, taking its money and keeping the peasants poor. Most Egyptians hated them, and Napoleon hoped to use this to his advantage. He told the people of Egypt, "I have come to give you back your rights and punish the rulers who took them. I respect God, His Prophet, and the Quran." At the same time, Murad and Ibrahim called all the Mamluk leaders to a mosque in Cairo. There, they agreed to form an army to fight the French invaders. Napoleon knew he had to act fast. Less than a day after his army finished landing, he started marching towards Cairo. But he didn't realize how hot and empty the land was. He pushed his men hard, even when they ran out of water and were dying of thirst. Hundreds collapsed and died. A few even killed themselves to escape the pain. Local horsemen, called Bedouins, circled the army like birds of prey, killing any soldier who fell behind. Even Napoleon's close friends, like Lannes and Murat, argued with him about his decisions. After 4 long days, the army finally reached a town where they could rest, drink, and get food. They had made it just in time. News came that a large Mamluk army led by Murad Bey was coming. The French marched to meet them. When the 4,000 Mamluk horsemen appeared, the French were amazed by their colorful clothes decorated with gold and jewels and their many fancy weapons. Murad bragged that he would cut off French heads like they were watermelons. But even though they looked impressive, the Mamluks didn't have the training or the plans to fight a modern army. When Napoleon arranged his soldiers into huge squares, the Mamluk horsemen could only ride around them. They couldn't break through the wall of French bayonets. Many were shot and fell from their horses. After 2 hours, the Mamluks gave up and rode away. They had lost about 1,000 men, while the French had lost almost no one. This victory was a big boost for the French soldiers after their hard journey through the desert. The Mamluks retreated to Embarked, a small town on the Nile River, right across from Cairo. Here, with the famous pyramids of Egypt just 9 miles away, they planned to use their full army to fight the French. On the very hot afternoon of July 21st, Napoleon's army got close to Embarked. He had 25,000 men formed into 5 giant squares. The cavalry and supplies were safe inside the squares, and there were cannons at each corner. Murad had boldly crossed the river with his men, leaving his partner Ibrahim behind. It's not clear how many men they had in total, but it was a lot. Murad's best soldiers, 6,000 Mamluk horsemen, were positioned between a small village and the town of Embarked, which was defended by a mix of soldiers and local fighters. Napoleon's plan was simple: punch through the enemy's middle and push their right side into the river. At 3:30 p.m., 2 groups of French soldiers started to advance. But the ground was uneven, and their square formations got messy. Murad saw his chance and sent his horsemen charging forward at great speed. The French commanders reacted just in time, and got their men back into tight squares. The soldiers held their fire until the last second, then shot all at once. Horses and riders fell to the ground. The Mamluks who survived couldn't get close to the French, who kept shooting at them. The Mamluks pulled back to regroup, but every time they charged, the same thing happened. Many Mamluks just gave up and ran away. Napoleon then ordered 2 more groups of soldiers forward. Again, the Mamluk horsemen charged, and again, they were stopped by French guns and bayonets. With the Mamluk horsemen defeated, the French soldiers stormed into Embarked. It was a total massacre. Those who weren't killed tried to escape into the Nile, where hundreds drowned. Murad Bey escaped with what was left of his horsemen and went to southern Egypt. Ibrahim Bey watched the disaster from across the river, then pulled his men back to Cairo. It was a huge, one-sided victory that took only 2 hours. The Mamluks lost over 5,000 men, including many of their best horsemen and leaders. The French lost fewer than 300 men. Napoleon, who was great at making himself look good, decided to call this victory the Battle of the Pyramids, since they could be seen in the distance. On July 24th, Napoleon marched into Cairo. Some parts of the city were on fire, burned by the Mamluks as they ran away. Napoleon wrote, "It would be hard to find a richer land and a more miserable, uneducated, and savage people. Still, Cairo was the heart of Egypt, a city of 600,000 people, and now the French controlled it." With the Mamluks scattered and running, it seemed like Napoleon's dream of conquering the East was coming true. Just 8 days later, that dream was completely destroyed. Out on the sea, Nelson and the British fleet had not given up their search for the French ships. Finally, on the afternoon of August 1st, Nelson found the French fleet hiding in a bay. He had 14 ships to their 13, and he decided to attack that evening. The British won a total and amazing victory. The huge French flagship L'Orient was blown up in a massive explosion. By the end, the British had destroyed or captured 11 French warships and taken over 3,000 prisoners. With his fleet gone, Napoleon was now trapped in Egypt. To make things worse, most of his army's money had sunk with L'Orient. But Napoleon didn't give up. In fact, the crisis seemed to give him energy. His choices were now clear. He and his army had to find a way to survive in this foreign land, or they would all die. While one of his generals chased after Murad Bey in the south, Napoleon started to change how Egypt was run. The old system of rule was ended. He set up a mail service and hospitals, and created a new way to collect taxes. Napoleon also started the Institute of Egypt for Science and Research. He showed a lot of interest in and respect for Islam, paying for new mosques and supporting religious holidays. This later started rumors that Napoleon had actually become a Muslim, but this was just a way to try and get the local people on his side. Napoleon also found out that his wife, Josephine, was cheating on him again. He was told, "Everyone in Paris knows about it." He found comfort by having affairs of his own. But no matter what the French did, they couldn't win over the local people. Most Egyptians just saw them as foreign invaders, who didn't share their faith. The situation was getting very tense. Small rebellions started to happen, and the French put them down with great force. Then in September, the Sultan in Constantinople declared a holy war against the French. Now the situation in Egypt was about to get much worse. On October 21, 1798, in Cairo, a French general was called to stop a protest. He found people building roadblocks, and they attacked and killed him. Soon, the whole city was fighting back. The French army responded with harsh discipline and crushed the rebellion. About 300 French soldiers were killed, along with several thousand Egyptians. Napoleon publicly forgave the leaders of the revolt, but he secretly told his general to have any rioter caught with a weapon beheaded and thrown into the Nile. The French had retaken control of Cairo by force, but it was clear that Napoleon would never win the hearts of the Egyptian people. For the next few months, the French army stayed in Cairo, feeling bored and stuck. They had little contact with France, missed their homes, and were running out of supplies, bullets and wine. There was also an outbreak of the deadly bubonic plague, which killed even more of the soldiers. The only fighting was in the south, where a general named Desaix and his 2,800 men were chasing Murad Bey. During this long chase, a young cavalry commander named Louis-Nicolas Davout proved he was a great soldier. On January 22, 1799, he and Desailly defeated Murad Bey's remaining forces. Murad himself got away and was still on the run. But these small victories didn't change the big picture for Napoleon's army. They were stuck 1,600 miles from France, with no hope of getting more soldiers or going home. For a short time, Napoleon hoped for a peaceful solution. France's foreign minister, a smart and tricky man named Talleyrand, had supported the Egypt mission. He promised Napoleon that he would personally go to Constantinople to make peace with the Sultan and get him to give Egypt to France. But Talleyrand never left Paris. The Sultan was still angry that France had attacked his land. There would be no talks and no deals. Orders were sent across the Ottoman Empire to gather soldiers to kick out the French invaders. Napoleon's situation looked worse than ever. His army was cut off, sick and surrounded by people who hated them. He decided to do the only thing he could think of, the same thing his hero Alexander would have done. He would attack. One of the most important skills for a historian is to check where their information comes from. Who is sharing it? Why are they sharing it? And what's their point of view? For example, Napoleon himself was not always truthful when talking about his own life. Today, we need these skills just to understand the news. Take the war in Ukraine. Anyone following it knows that the information can be true, biased, or just completely made up. But how do you know which is which? Well, there's a website and app that helps you understand where your news comes from. Ground News, our video sponsor, is a website and app that wants to give people an easy, data-driven and fair way to read the news. They don't just gather news from different places. Every story has a quick picture that shows the political bias, the truthfulness, and who owns the news source. For example, here's a story on Zelensky's trip to Washington. Right away, you can see that 101 news outlets reported on it. Of these, 24% lean left, and 16% lean right. You can even see who owns the news companies, and that 63% are owned by big media groups. Ground news also makes it easy to compare headlines, so you can see how political views and ownership can change how a story is told. For example, on the right, you have one news source saying aid prospects are bleak and another saying last-ditch plea. Then on the left, another source says Zelensky is fighting for aid and trying to break deadlock in Congress. We can then read the full article, all inside the Ground News app. Another feature we love is their blind spot feed. It shows you stories that aren't getting much attention from either the left or the right. In other words, if you mostly read news from one side, which stories are being hidden from you? Ground News is a great way to keep up with the news while knowing who's telling you the story. It's the perfect way to break out of your bubble and see the news from many different angles. We definitely recommend this app to our viewers. And now is the perfect time to try it. With their holiday sale, you'll get 40% off their Vantage plan, which gives you full access to all their features. This offer is only available by going to ground.news/Alex Histoer, or by clicking the link in the video description. It's their biggest sale of the year, so sign up today and help an independent platform that's working to make the news world more open. Thanks to all our Patreon supporters who help make Alex Histoer possible. You can find out how to get early ad-free access to all our videos and other cool rewards by visiting the Alex Histoer Patreon page.